Edwene Gaines. How many people have benefited from the ministry of Edwene Gaines, right? I want to say she might have been here in 2016, and I remember experiencing her and just being like, wow, she's one of those luminaries that made you want to take certain things in your life up a notch. I love, 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 love being inspired by men and women of faith, especially, who call me to a higher space within my own self. Okay? You know, it's like life is always lifing, right? And when somebody speaks life into you and they cause you to understand yourself and your experience in the world in a different way, it makes you want to just, sit up a little straighter, hold your spine a little more, upright, and have a sense of more dignity because they have ignited the reality of the experience and the feelings of the God within you. And it makes you see yourself differently and feel yourself differently. She was one of those people. So please hear these words about this amazing person. There are moments when words feel inadequate to express the loss of someone whose life has made such a lasting impact. So today we remember and celebrate the life and ministry of Reverend Edwene Gaines. For decades, Reverend Edwene was a beloved voice in the unity movement, inspiring people to see abundance as more than material prosperity, okay? Through her teaching, writing, and ministry, she encouraged others to recognize the limitless possibilities within themselves and to live from a deeper awareness of faith, gratitude, and divine abundance. Her wisdom, warmth, and dedication to spiritual transformation touched generations of people around the world. Her legacy will continue through the many lives she influenced and the teachings she so generously shared. We hold Reverend Edwene's loved ones, friends, students, and the entire Unity community in our hearts during this time of remembrance. And may we honor her life by continuing to carry forward the message of possibility, prosperity, and faith that she shared so very passionately. May her memory be a blessing and may her light continue to inspire us all. Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you. So, I'm going to just start out by saying today's message, I'm going to tell you why it was hard. Now, it's hard because I love teaching, right? I love the process of being didactic, the preparation, the deciding what to say, all of that. This message is really heart-centered for me. Since 2007, I believe, that's I think when I came into the behavioral health field, I have had the joy and sometimes the grief, but more the joy more than anything, of working with people who struggle with addiction. I want to say I became an addiction counselor after doing my 2 years in 2009. Then I went on later to get my master's degree. Then I just kept working in the field in treatment centers. And so I have a really sweet amount of experience, especially in the treatment environment of working with people who struggle. And so if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. I want you to call me on my BS. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, I like your enthusiasm. And at the same time, that fervor of wanting to figure out how to cultivate a different way of life was so important to these folks, okay? For those people who maybe don't have a lot of experience in working directly with people who have addiction, sometimes, and I will say this was my case as I was sitting in classes learning, you come in with a certain perspective and, I'm going to say it and it's going to sound ignorant, but I'm going to claim it as mine, okay? You don't have to raise your hand, okay? I know me best. Going into this going, okay, why don't they just stop? Is that not the most ignorant thing when you hear that now, given all the neuroscience and everything that has trickled down over the last 30 years? No, ain't nothing that easy. And I think about the times, I want to say must have been the late 70s or early 80s, bless her heart, Nancy Reagan and Gary Coleman with those commercials. Remember that? Just say no. Oh, Nancy, it's not that easy. And Gary, bless you, Gary, you should just sit down and not talk about things. But my point in saying that is I want to say, look how far we've come with all that we know, and I'm so grateful for it, because we don't have to castigate anybody, treat anybody like trash. We don't have to resort to the old ways of doing things when we didn't know any better. You know, I was going through the preparation and I was like just laughing at certain things because different memories. And I remember even, you know, my mother, bless her heart, and this is not to highlight a whole generation, but I'm just going to say it. My mom was a boomer, of course, right? And so I would say, well, Mom, I just feel blah, 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 blah. She'd be like, oh, you don't feel that. I'm like, how you going, what? Remember those old things that we have even said and maybe even heard other people say that you just go, oh, that's just so cringe now. Right? It's just so cringy. But we didn't know it was cringe back then. We may not have liked it, but we didn't have better language to flesh it out, to express and explain why. And in comes social media. Now we know everybody's business. We look at stuff and go, I didn't even want to know that about you. Ooh, I'm gonna chill them for 30 days. We're gonna snooze on that. But here's the thing. The fact that we become so aware means that we understand what we need to deconstruct so that we can attend to people better. Okay? It is so okay to go, we got to do better. 1,000%. And find out what that better is for you. And find out what that better is for me. But that progress, not perfection thing is not just for AA or NA, it's for all of us. So I'm hoping today, as I share this message that is kind of information dense, it's still very relational though, because I kept most of the clinical stuff out, because that's not this space. And that's fine. We don't need to go there. Let those folk do that. And that's what I do during the week. What we're doing in here today is we're going to focus on staying in our lane, doing our part, which is not all the things. It's just this thing. Does that make sense? Because those of us who struggle with addiction, we need a variety of things. So one space can't be all the things, right? One space can't be all the things, but whatever your part is, do it well. And that is more than enough. Okay? That is more than enough. And I'm hoping that with today's message, you will understand that whatever it is that you embody that's meaningful, that your role and your soul will flourish together in the lives of people that you may know who struggle with addiction, so that you could do your part fully without worrying about their outcome. Because, honey, that's not your business. I live in a very delicate balance between I'm going to do my utmost and their life does not belong to me. And I can tell you there is tension there. But keeping in mind, people's life doesn't belong to me, and I'm going to do my best. When I hold those two together, it keeps me from being extra in people's lives, and it allows me to constantly hold them upon my heart and mind to go, what else do they need? What have we not turned? Like, what stone has been left unturned? What else can I say? Can I say it differently? And it helps me to stay in that professional space and that heart-centered space of, I'm going to trust the universe for their unfoldment, because their outcome is not my business, but their process is partly my responsibility. Does that make sense? So when you think about it, whether you have children, grandchildren, a niece or a nephew, a neighbor, whoever in your life that may struggle with addiction, honey, you're not responsible for the unfoldment of their end game. You're just responsible for saying, hey, so-and-so, I love you, it's good to see your face. And let your warmth do the work. And not to underestimate it. You have no idea. You have no idea the wounds that people have, and we're going to talk about a little bit of that today, and your part in helping them heal their wounds. So, hear these words from a book titled The Life Model, Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You. While you are living from your hurt, you may not be able to discover the characteristics of your heart. As God heals the hurt and is invited into every area of your life, you will be able to discover the nature of your heart. The people who see you as God sees you can tell you what your heart is really like. So pay attention to what they tell you about your heart and use it as your guide for living. When you are living from your heart, you are truly being yourself. Joy increases, that's our dopamine, and fear decreases, that's our cortisol, as you go about your daily activities. The word freedom is often used to describe how it feels to live from your heart, and you certainly need freedom to make headway along your maturity pathway. If you guys ever want to read something that will help you really synthesize the things that a person who's struggling with addiction needs, that book, The Life Model, Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You, would be a really great source. It ties together neuroscience with some social dynamics, with understanding Christianity tied in there, and it's a couple other things too, that really formulate this really neat model for understanding how we become wired in our brains. Okay? Because what we're going to talk about today on a certain level also contributes to addiction prevention. When we are wired by love, okay? And I'm not talking about, we used to call it back in the day sloppy agape. I'm not talking about, like not being able to talk to people when you're offended. I'm talking like the real stuff of like, wow, when you said such and such, that really hurts me and I felt like it separated us. Can we have a talk about how that came up? Or something of that nature where when there's a rupture, there's a repair process. When we can learn how to land those things a certain way, we keep love in its truest sense real and authentic. Does that make sense? We keep it real and authentic, and that is the foundation that everything else comes out of. So we are really great. I love New Thought because we love love. Child, we just love love. We do. And it's so sweet. I have never been in a more loving space, right? That has also tied within that this essence of like we're pursuing wholeness in our own ways, whatever that means, right? So I want you to understand recovery is not just for drugs and alcohol, blah, 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 blah. Recovery is anything that we feel either we didn't have access to in life and we still have a need to access that, or something that we had access to that we lost through certain circumstances that we want to regain, okay? So I'm going to say this. Recovery is for everybody. There is nobody left out of recovery. Amen? So when we go, can't they just stop? I'm working on stopping overeating. Clearly, no. Okay? So if we look at things from a perspective through a lens of we're all in recovery, there's no room to judge anybody else because we're all, we're all there. Amen. People enter the world of addiction for a multitude of provocations. Innocence stolen, undiagnosed organic brain dysfunction, self-medication, genetic predispositions, curiosity that began in a moment and led to years, medication leading to overuse, soul-splitting grief, the ritualization of death because life got too heavy, the way that carbohydrates feel in our brain, it's comforting because of the way that they metabolize in the body like sugar. It turns off our attachment light in our limbic system. Turning off our need for connection with others and just wanting to feel better. Just wanting to feel better. I listen to music to feel better. I eat chocolate to feel better. I pet my dogs to feel better. I put on makeup when I don't feel like it and look at myself in the mirror and go, hey girl, hey, to feel better. Gotta work on that, but okay. We do things to feel better, and there's nothing wrong with that when we're not violating someone else, okay? We're all motivated to feel better, all right? Learning that substances can take the edge off of anxiety and depression, even if only for a little while, is some of the stuff that people have experienced, that they are actively trying to escape aspects of their body to try to just turn the knob down on it, okay? Now, Brene Brown says this in Atlas of the Heart. Shock and incredulity can take our breath away, and grief and powerlessness often come for our hearts and our minds. But anguish, the combination of these experiences, not only takes away our ability to breathe, feel, and think, it comes for our bones. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Has anybody experienced that kind of grief? Yeah, me too. Me too. Okay. Anguish often causes us to physically crumble in on ourselves, literally bringing us to our knees or forcing us all the way to the ground. The element of powerlessness is what makes anguish traumatic. We are unable to change, reverse, or negotiate what has already happened. And even in those situations where we can temporarily reroute anguish, with to-do lists and tasks, it finds its way back to us. Have you ever experienced trying to escape something and all of a sudden you ran right back into it? Your brain got hijacked and you couldn't get out of it. Yeah, absolutely. We have all had that. Imagine being in a space where you have that and there was no clear way to stop it. You couldn't find the thing to scratch the itch. And so your brain just kept getting hijacked about different things that happened to you or things you saw happen to somebody else. People are self-medicating, y'all. They're self-medicating pain, stuff they can't talk about. Today I invite and invoke softness of heart and increased flexibility in our thinking. The willingness for deeper complexity, and the wisdom to know the difference between what our role calls for in life of someone who's wrestling with addiction or overuse of a substance or a process, and what our soul calls for. Amen. Now, addiction, the result of doing more of a substance or a process in order to get these same results experienced previously, and using the substance or the process more than initially planned, as well as the physiological dependence that results from doing so, is how addiction is held together and formulated within the body. Whether it's cocaine or kratom, an eating disorder, or hyperproductivity at work, there is an internal set of processes that is happening that demands satisfaction, that doesn't care about one's well-being, family members, social responsibilities, nor spirituality, honey. Okay? Addiction is not a moral issue. I will keep standing 10 toes down on that. Addiction is not a moral failing. It is a biological, physiological set of processes. And it has implications in other life domains. However, addiction is not a moral failing. Drop the rock on that. Bless you. Dr. Nora Volkow, who is the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, as well as the chief of the Laboratory of Neuroimaging at the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, has shared that there are biochemical signatures that cause brains to be compromised. Often, the capacity to control strong urges has been compromised due to a reduction in dopamine. Hey, sweetheart, glad you're here. Dopamine is the chemical that signals reward in our brains. We all love us some dopamine. It's why we keep doing what we do, because stuff feels good. Amen. Don't act like we don't know. Amen. Our responsibility is to co-create, okay, in the spiritual space. Our responsibility is to co-create an external environment whereby those who struggle experience what I'm going to talk about now. The life model suggests this. People need, number one, a place to belong. Then they can engage in the growing capacity of first receiving, then giving loving kindness. This promotes recovery, okay, which leads eventually to maturity. And these things stacked together equals thriving as the person who struggles with addiction does their part, meaning take the medication, take the supplements, do whatever it is you need to do, attend the recovery group experience, come see me as a therapist, all the things that they have to do, plus they get us too. Isn't that cool? Oh my God, I love that. They get to do their part, whoever they is, and we get to do our part. Learning how to even eat responsibly is a recovery task. Have you ever worked so hard during a day that you forgot to eat? That was my 20s and 30s. I'm like, it is 3 o'clock. Girl, eat something, okay? Now, if those of us, that's not a problem now. If those of us who would consider ourselves not people who struggle heavily with addiction can do stuff like that, like think about people who are chronically unaware of what's going on to the extent that they're always slightly dissociated or trying to be. Just learning some practical stuff sometimes feels heavy, okay? The text goes on to say this: people need to know who they are. And something that I love, again, about us, especially us here, not just New Thought, but just us practically, is that we really have embodied for a long time seeing the Christ in other people, or seeing the image of the transcendent in other people and not focusing on slip-ups, because we understand glitches are a part of the human experience. And we accept that, but that's not what we're going to set up camp on. We're going to see the beauty of you. And we're going to keep reflecting that back to you. And even in those nonverbal hugs and kindnesses and smiles, we're calling one another to our highest and saying, let's ascend together. Okay? That's not flight behavior. That's the opposite. That's saying, hey, I see you, and I'm going to focus in on the beauty of you. It takes skill to be able to do that, okay? But we do it for other loved ones. So if you think about a baby, it cracks me up. Like, sometimes I'll just, I'm in my head a lot, thinking, and I'm like, man, when people talk about wanting to have kids, they're not thinking about the nights of getting woken up because the child peed in the bed. They're not thinking about all the coughs that happen in mama's face and how they want to sleep with you because they're crying and uncomfortable, all the sleepless nights. Nobody's thinking about how you got to go pick them up from school because something behavioral happened and you got to take off work. They just want to reproduce and have a child with this person they say they love. They're not factoring in all, I'm like, kids are work. Have you met kids? But when we see them, we go, oh my goodness. I know I do. I get real silly. Kids and dogs, right? Kids and dogs. It's like, oh my God, because we're not focused on all of that. We're focused on, aren't you just the most beautiful, perfect thing? I love you so much, right? That's where we go. We do it naturally with them, for those of us who do. And we get to do it in here with one another, and we go, oh my God, it's so good to see you. And we engage in a way that says, you have value to me. And that's something that matters, because you don't know what's going on in their minds and their bodies that's left over from their family of origin. You don't know. Most of the people that I have gotten to work with that are maybe former military people, they were traumatized before they went into the military. The military might have been an extension for some of them of their dysfunctional families. Like, that's not the stuff that we always talk about openly or that we're aware of. So when people come in here, we set them up to have a very different experience. We say, we belong together, and that carries weight. None of us gets out of being required to do this work of developing wholeness, because developing wholeness is not a magic wand, y'all, being waved and now you're there. That's not how it happens. It's learning how we hurt and being willing to stay relational with satisfying people, polluting our anguish with the right information, making the next right decision for our well-being moment by moment, most of the time, especially when we don't feel like it. That's a lot of neurological processes right there, just in that sentence. Choosing others to experience life with who seem to know the way forward, not perfectly, but good enough. If any of you is familiar with Winnicott's work, he came up with the good enough mother. And from that, we can talk about the good enough friend. They don't have to be perfect. The good enough church. We qualify. The good enough job. If you happen to love it so much, that's bonus. But we just need good enough to be able to hold each other. Okay? Good enough is a key component. Stay relational. We do this by cultivating empathy and validation of another's experiences. Empathy affirms someone's emotional state without judgment or offering an alternative in an effort to change their mood state so that we can feel more comfortable. Validation involves letting someone know that something they shared made sense to you based on their evaluation, not ours. And even by giving an example of how the thing that made sense to them makes sense to me personally. So I'm going to give you an example. When I was in seminary, I knew I was going through Unity School, and I knew I was going to have to do a church internship. So I was like, okay, that's already baked into the plan. So I decided to do a CPE unit doing chaplaincy. Okay, so I have 1 unit of CPE. It was a life-changing experience because I knew I needed to deal with my death issue, because that was the big ugly for me. Because when I was 22, my mother died unexpectedly, and then like 9 years later, my dad died. So by the time I was, getting through with that first master's, I was like, God, I need to deal with my death stuff, or else I'm not going to be useful to people in church. Or anywhere really. And so I did, and it was wonderful. And I went in, I'm just going to tell you about me. This is not about you. This is fully me. Remember, I know me best. So we were in having our discussions and having everything laid out. And I literally went in, and I was like, well, they just need encouragement. And I just went into this whole little ignorant spiel about, uneducated at the time, spiel about how I thought about chaplaincy as going into a space where somebody knew that they were, going to be dying soon, and I was just going to kind of lighten things up. That is like the weirdest thing ever, okay? And I'm going to tell you why, all right? I didn't understand the importance of stepping into someone else's world, having the privilege of being invited into it and holding space for what they needed in the way that I was going to learn over the course of that 8 or 9 months. It's not about me bringing all that I think is great about me and landing in their space, making a splash, and then I'm out. It's about, wow, where are they in that moment, and what are they welcoming me into? I sat and had a whole conversation with a woman who was nearly 100 years old about her wanting to buy a second car. And she wanted that car to match the car that she already had in her driveway. And then somehow the house got brought into it. And I was like, oh, and I thought, okay, this is your opportunity. This is not about, I was like, oh, really? And I was like, and what kind of interior would you like? That woman hadn't been driving in probably, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 years. And she wasn't going to get out of that facility. But we went on in a conversation because I prioritized her need. I prioritized her need to try to solve the dilemma for the moment, and I added to that. I empathized with the fact that I didn't need to What was I going to tell her? Honey, you don't even drive anymore. You know how, I don't know if you guys have ever seen or been in a situation where you knew less than you know now, and you try to talk people with dementia out of something. It's just, no, you're not going to get anywhere, and you're going to make them more frustrated, which is going to cause deterioration for the way that they do life. That may give them a really bad day. So, me being uneducated about what is necessary going into this space, I was just bringing me. No, 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 no. It's very similar to folks who struggle with addiction, who may be experiencing a level of vulnerability that we have no idea about. We need to listen more than think we're going to do them good. Does that make sense? We listen and we get in where we fit in. You listen to understand. You wait for the welcome. And in that process, what we're doing is we're allowing them to see us as being authentic, because we are. And we're allowing them to take up space they may have never taken up in other spaces in their life, because we don't know the families they came out of. Maybe that part of them wasn't even welcomed. Do you understand that you can be something that someone never experienced before, just through love? And that is a big old deal. It's huge. Now, I want to leave you with this. Food for thought. I'm imagining that you all were thinking about somebody that you've cared about historically or presently that may struggle with addiction in some form. And I'm hoping this information has, if anything, encouraged you to know that all the love you gave was never in vain, regardless of the outcome. Their soul is God's, not yours. No matter what happened, trust that whatever deposits you made in their life of kindness and gentleness helped them out more than you could ever know. When we stay in our own lane and let everybody else do the things that they need to do, when we stay in our own lane and we do our best to love, sometimes that is the most important thing. So don't undervalue your contribution in people's lives. Every time you love somebody who struggles with a life-changing reality, okay, that is moving them towards seeing themselves in a way that they need to envision themselves in order to hold all the things together in this thing called life. And that takes work, and it takes years, and it takes all of us. Amen? Amen. We do some really good stuff here, and sometimes it may be hard to qualify that with language, and I'm hoping today some of that language got a little bit more clear, and I'm going to be around afterwards, so if anybody has questions, feel free, just come up and say, hey, I want to talk to you, and we can chat, okay? So just know that. I'm watching the time. Can I do like five or so minutes, 7, maybe 5 to 7 minutes more? Is that okay? Okay, all right, because I want to be mindful. I want to open the floor just in case someone really has a burning desire, a burning question they want to ask. I can only do 2 max because I want to be respectful. Does anybody have a question that they want to ask or need to ask? And I will bring the mic to you. And also I will say, if I don't know the answer, I will find the answer and bring it back to you or say it next time I talk. And you can just watch my talk.
My name is Claire, by
Hey.
the way. And as someone who struggles with the disease of addiction, I have a lot of self-experience with, obviously helping other addicts in recovery. And I find it hardest to help my sister who struggles. And I've tried, violently using the things that I know to get her to understand. And then overly exerting myself and going beyond expiration of financial help or, codependency, to where now most of the time have to use ChatGPT to converse with her because otherwise I'm coming off as unempathetic.
Right.
And I struggle with not being able to help her. And when I try, it seems to just blow up.
Yeah.
And I struggle with the fear of, what happens to addicts who are out there using, and not knowing if what else I could do to help her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I
and
do.
then every
Yeah.
day I'm like, oh, is today the day? And whenever I was not so kind, but really just loving but direct,
Yeah.
being scared that that's the memory that I'll have. You know what I mean?
I do.
And it's just hard to,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do about it.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm going to say this. I don't have solutions, I have suggestions. So I want to be clear. I'm not going to overplay my hand, okay? Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to approach it this way. And I'm going to ask that you hear my heart. Okay? I want you to hear my heart, and I want to qualify it. I'm having a lot of prefacing because I want to be sensitive to your need, okay? When it's somebody close to us in a familial environment, it is impossible not to go to our own crazy place. It's literally impossible, right? I know what it's like to sit in that spin and to be so fretful about someone else's outcome. And, okay, not but, and the work that is ours to do is that we get really clear about how much of we're importing into someone else's experience. That's our work. That's hard. Running from the potentiality of our own guilt or regret, I've done that. It's like trying to outrun a bear. You can't, right? But that's the compulsive energy that keeps us, bumping heads with other people. Which is why I shared earlier, I hold the tension between I'm going to do my part and I get clear about what my part actually is, but I also recognize that I am not responsible for other people's lives and the way that I can overbill myself to be. And that's where I talk about staying in your own lane. I can pray, I can do certain things, I can even give myself to harm reduction, right? But it's not going to create the outcome that someone else needs because your sister needs so many other things. So when we take on burdens and we become, like Reverend Alice talked about last week, it was so good, the Cartman triangle. I mean, that's like foundational to addiction. There's a victim, the persecutor, and I forget the other role. But the thing is that we move around that triangle. We move around that triangle. So by the time we're persecuting the person and they're reacting, we're just going to trade roles with them because they're going to have you ever had someone who struggled with addiction just hand you your whole behind and just kind of like go like, who do you think you are? They're right. They're not wrong because we have overstepped the space that they have for us and we are trying to push them outside of their window of tolerance. So the thing is as much as you already said it, codependency is real. It's in every family. We can't avoid it. But there's a lot of love within there and aspects of it too. With that being said, that's going to be your work to find where love metaphorically ends and where codependence begins. And that may mean someone else needs to keep you accountable for that. Does that make sense? Because it is a delicate dance, because internally we're just like, oh my God, the potential outcome feels awful. But if people haven't welcomed us into a space in their life in a certain way and we agree to go there understanding the responsibility of that, we're out of line. And so we have to do our work to become pro-dependent or interdependent rather than codependent. And those are some different guidelines for us. Because anybody in the family scenario can be as addicted to someone else's, I'm addicted to my need for you to recover as you are to whatever. And we're not going to work things out that way. So to whatever degree, this is where spirituality comes in. To me, spirituality, I'm holding a broad space for that. For me, spirituality is my connection with the healthiest part of me, recognizing all the other parts too, and not doing my best to not get out of hand with any of my parts, and keeping myself contained from affecting other people adversely, as well as my connection with other people. Does that make sense? So that's why a lot of people do AANA, all the A's, because, the higher power of the group consciousness is what people they enjoy and live into because they have belonging. So unless you're belonging, giving and receiving love, blah, 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 or unless she asks you something specifically, there's nothing for you to do. And that feels like powerlessness, but it's not. You haven't gotten the invitation. Does that make sense? It is hard. And it requires deep breathing a lot and resetting. But if somebody kept demanding that I be something that I'm not willing to be yet, I would hand them their behind too. I'd be like, what are you even doing? Did I ask you? I was just sharing. No. Of course we're gonna fight because it's intrusive. But there's tension there with being all that you can be for her. Does that make sense? As a sister, it's not small. Did that help at all? Okay. Thanks for loving her, though. Yeah. One more question? Yes.
Hi. So my name is Sosa. This is my first time here. And I recently am in recovery from addiction. So, yeah. And it's hard to admit. I grew up as a pastor's kid. I grew up very on the straight and narrow path. And life kind of just took me in crazy different directions. But recently, with my experience, I was hospitalized and had a really big wake-up call. And unfortunately, I lost a really big relationship in my life. I recently moved, in the process of a divorce, moved from Virginia to Florida with my best friend. And she was the one that called the cops on me and got me Baker acted and, saved my life, which I appreciate, but it was a very traumatic experience for her. And now she's at the point where she wants me to move out, doesn't want to talk to me, and what has really hit me hard was that she said that throughout our friendship, she has felt a lack of compassion. And that hits me hard because I see myself as an extremely compassionate person, as an extremely kind person, someone who is very in touch with my spirituality and very in touch with my relationship with God. And this whole experience and the wake-up call of recognizing that I was addicted and all of that stuff has just caused me to question my own self, And it's like, what if my best friend, the person who has been with me and walked with me through this life, has said that I'm lacking in compassion, then what is the actual truth? I can tell myself I'm compassionate all day long, but if other people aren't feeling it and aren't seeing it, is that really valid? And so, yeah, that's where I'm at.
First of all, my condolences to you for being a pastor's child. Jesus, there's recovery in that. But and bless your heart, I've not met a pastor's child yet that didn't have something going on because of the consuming nature of, I'm not going to say it that way, because there's a lot. I don't even have time, y'all. But bless you, because the demand is high for a certain performative whatever. And I respect that. So, yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. So I'm going to respond to what you're saying. When people are struggling with addiction, to me, there's life that has happened to them in such a way that they're not their fullest, most robust self, all right? Then you're doing the processes and the stuff, attunement is off. Because when a person is embroiled in addiction, the attunement with themselves and what they need is off. You know what I mean? So when you think about that, there are times when you've engaged with other people where, because your nervous system was on fire with trauma and whatever was in your system, it was like a block against an empathic engagement in the way that that you're probably capable of. Because addiction robs capacity. Okay? Addiction just robs us of capacity. And so whatever it is that she loves about you, she still loves it. She just wanted maybe more of it. So there's always some distance between us and loved ones when there's something going on in our system and we got trauma hijacked, because that's just the nature of trauma and addiction. Okay? So I think what she might be feeling and expressing is like, I want to feel close to you, but I can't trust that this closeness is going to last. And there have been times where you've really missed me, and I want a different experience. So what she's going to need is some follow through so that you can land more inside of yourself. And what I have found, this is part of the miracle of recovery, I think, you go to deeper depths in yourself that you didn't even know existed. And your brain comes online the longer you stay off of the substance or away from the process, in such a way that you go, oh my God, I had no idea. And that will happen throughout life over and over, even for people who didn't struggle with addiction, just simply because our bodies and our brains are taking in new information and it's landing differently and causing us to do the thing that I talked about earlier, which is maturity. Now I see it differently. So your relationship, if you can hear this, may not be over. She just may need a little break. You get some more stability. She starts to learn that maybe I can trust that. And then she starts to see if she can feel you differently. Because there is a felt sense of nurture and warmth in you really feeling me. You know how, like, I think your generation came up with, are you feeling me? It's like, yeah, I'm feeling you. There's something about that. That's nervous system to nervous system. Okay? So yes, I'm sure you are delightfully, all those things you said, but there's a distinctive felt sense that people don't have access to when they're in trauma hijacks and when substances are in their system and when they have to get bigger and all the things. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. You're very welcome. Thank you guys for participating, and now we're going to go into a time of meditation. And again, I'll be here afterwards, so feel free to ask any questions you may have. So as we just take a nice deep breath, and just allow ourselves to experience rest. Allow yourself to envision the secret place of the Most High within yourself. The place that you've gone to before, where you can relax with a sense of safety with the God of your understanding. That place. And I want you to breathe into it and get a sense of its fullness. And in that space, I want you to ask, Spirit, what is the one thing? What is the one thing that was said or felt today that I'm to take with me? The one thing. And just listen. ask Spirit to help you understand more about that one thing. Ask Spirit what your next step is in actualizing the one thing. And lastly, thanks, Spirit, for giving you clarity and for being a very present help in your mind and in your body. And allow yourself to commit to doing that next right thing. Spirit, thank you that we together are your beloved. We honor your presence in each person today. We thank you for the stirring up of the things today. We thank you for the healing and the wholeness that we are aligning ourselves with for our highest good as you carry us along every step of the way. We need you, we desire you, we long for you. Continue to displace the areas in our lives, God, in our minds, in our bodies that are bent towards our own destruction. God, help us to love well. Help us to know where we end and where you begin in someone's life. We honor your work in all, God, and we thank you for the unfoldment in the lives of those we love so dearly who are struggling, who are wrestling. And God, we'll keep committing them to your care every day for our own sakes. In your many amazing names, I thank you for the blessing of belonging to you and belonging with each other. And so it is.